Welcome back to the podcast, to YouTube, wherever you're listening or watching. Today, I want to talk to you about something that I think is very simple, but also it's going to be a little confronting. I'm going to confront you a little bit, but I'm going to do this in love because we're talking about standards. And the way I want to explain this has the power to reveal so much about what you might be experiencing in your season of life right now. And I don't want to do this in a harsh or rigid way. I'm never about that, and not in a way that creates any pressure or, activates your perfectionism or anything like that. But what I want to do is I want to speak with you in a way that's going to invite you into a deeper level of self respect, of alignment, and personal leadership. Because this is the thing, if you have found this podcast, you're probably a leader or somebody who is destined to be a leader, because that's the people I attract. I work with people who are typically entrepreneurs, women who have already created some success in business and are looking to ascend to the next level. So, yes, we're definitely going to be talking a little bit about personal leadership because whether we consciously acknowledge it or not, your life is always reflecting what you're willing to tolerate. Let me say that again. Your life is always reflecting whatever it is that you're willing to tolerate. So it's not just what you're desiring or dreaming about. It's not just what you say you want, but your life is a reflection of what you allow. And once you truly understand this, everything begins to make sense and everything becomes easier. Praise God, right? Okay, so let's talk about how your life is calibrated to your standards. Okay. So your standards are not what you say that you want. Your standards are what you consistently accept. They are reflections of your decisions. They're reflections of your boundaries, of your habits, of your relationships, of your work or your work environment, and they are reflections of your internal dialogue. So standards are very important. If you look at any area of your life, your income, your business, your relationships, your energy, you will see that it is currently aligned with what you have deemed acceptable in your life, whether you consciously or unconsciously realize it. So, this is definitely not an episode about blame. I am not about that at all, but I am about radical awareness. We can change so much when we are aware. Awareness gives me the ability to change. So I love awareness because that's like the womb of change is awareness. So many women that I work with one on one or, women who I have in my private community, they say that they want more. They want a lot of different things. They want more love in their life. They want more impact. They want more income. They want more clients, whatever it is, more health. But they hesitate when it comes to raising their standards. And the reason that they do this, and maybe this sounds familiar, it's not because of a lack of desire. It is always because of the discomfort that comes with change. So, raising your standards means becoming unavailable for your old patterns. It sounds exciting, but we also know it's hard, right? Raising your standards means becoming unavailable for your old patterns. So, it means no longer tolerating what once felt normal. It means saying no when it would be easier to say yes. And it means choosing alignment over approval. And that can feel uncomfortable, especially if you have been conditioned to be accommodating, as many of us women have been conditioned to be. If you've been conditioned to be agreeable, to be self-sacrificing, there's also this fear, I think, that and I've seen this collectively with people that I work with and people that I'm just in contact with. There is a fear that if you raise your standards, you're going to lose something. You're going to lose relationships, maybe. You're going to lose opportunities. You're going to lose just familiarity because raising your standards means you have to shake things up. You have to get uncomfortable. But what often goes, I think, very unrecognized is that staying where you are is also really costing you something. And I know it feels familiar and I know it feels safe, but what is the cost? What is the cost of those things? So your standards are deeply connected to your sense of self respect. And this, again, is not in a performative way. It's just in this like internal knowing of what you're available for. So a woman who respects herself does not need to prove her worth. She doesn't need to over explain her boundaries. She doesn't need to really explain much at all, actually. She does not need to chase anything, especially what doesn't feel aligned. She simply just chooses differently. And those choices, repeated over time and practiced, they create a completely different life experience. So there was this point in my life, I can very vividly remember this, where I realized that I was asking for more while I was still tolerating what belonged to a previous version of me. So I wanted growth, but I was still allowing patterns in my life that kept me small. And I wanted expansion, but I was still making these decisions in my business and my life from this place of fear or urgency. And what shifted everything was not some new strategy. It was just a decision. It was a decision to raise my standards in how I thought and how I chose and how I showed up and what I allowed. And at first, that felt really uncomfortable, but over time, it became normal. And as it became normal, my life began to reflect that shift. And we talked about embodiment last week. I had this idea of the woman I wanted to be, the mother, the wife, the leader. I had this vision of who she was, and I knew I had to raise my standards and I had to get uncomfortable in order to ascend, to move into to that space, to that version of myself. So, let's talk about what this actually looks like, what raising your standards actually looks like, and why this is so important. Because if you are wanting to grow your business, and let me just be really blunt here. Women come to me and they say, Allison, I want more confidence and I want more money. And those two things are usually linked, right? How do I elevate in my business? And this is so much of the work I do is talking about standards, because raising your standards is what's going to allow you to increase your confidence, to increase your income. It's such a pivotal part of the process. It's not about becoming rigid or being a perfectionist or anything like that. It's about becoming very intentional. So it looks like choosing rest, and this feels very counterintuitive to my clients, but it looks like choosing rest instead of choosing burnout, even when you feel behind, because that's just a narrative that's rooted in lack. We work on those things. It looks like choosing clarity and making decisions quickly instead of overthinking everything. It looks like choosing peace and alignment instead of people pleasing. It looks like choosing truth, what God says about you, what you believe is true about you, instead of believing lies of the enemy of your soul and believing old narratives that other people probably threw on you, anyways. Okay. So it's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about no longer accepting what you know is misaligned. And there is a cost of not raising your standards. There's always a cost. You can either experience the discomfort of growth, or you can experience the discomfort of staying the same, staying exactly where you are. And while staying the same may feel easier in the moment, over time, as those days go by and those weeks and those months and those years, it creates such a dissatisfaction that is so hard to ignore. I call it operating below your potential because you've decided to play it safe all along. Operating below your potential is soul crushing because you know that there is more. You can feel it. It's your divine assignment. It's why you're on this earth. And ignoring that comes with its own weight, a huge cost. So, for my women of faith, but also of not of faith, I want to offer you this perspective. You were not created to live in misalignment with who you are called to be. You were created for a reason. There's a higher standard available to you, not as pressure, but as an invitation to step more fully into your divine assignment, an invitation to step more fully into integrity and into wholeness. And stepping into that is not about striving, it's actually about responding. So, if this episode is resonating with you and you're ready to surround yourself with women who are also raising their standards, who are growing intentionally, growing in all the ways, they're growing in their relationships, they're growing in their impact, in their income, in their businesses, all of those things. If you are ready to become more aligned, I want to invite you to join my private community. So, my private community is called the Inner Shift Society, and we have ongoing conversations about identity and mindset and business and embodiment, personal expansion, all of the things that help you grow. It's a space where you can continue this work with support and reflection and connection. And I will put the link in the show notes, but I would love to have you there. I would love to get to know you. I do live coaching calls. And so we actually get to chat together, and I would love for you to be there. But I want to leave you with this today. Okay. So your life is not determined by what you hope for, it is determined by what you are available for. So I want you to ask yourself honestly, what am I currently tolerating that no longer aligns with the woman that I'm becoming? And what would it look like to raise my standards, even if it's slightly? It doesn't have to be huge leaps, but what would it look like to raise my standards starting right now, starting today? Okay. All right. Now go. Go, my friend, and be the woman that your future is waiting on. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'm so glad that you're here. And I hope that as you go, you will be blessed.